This is my sofa, and there is nothing particularly exciting about that fact. It's actually a little bit old and probably due for a replacement, but it is where I do a surprisingly large amount of my work. To do that work, I've been using this guy. It's a 11-inch MacBook Air that I've had for probably 6 or 7 years now. And just like the sofa that I do the work on, it's getting a little long in the tooth and it's probably due for a replacement. Replacement-wise, I've tried a few different things. Obviously, I've tried new MacBooks. I've given things like iPads a go, the new iPad Pro, but none of them have really done exactly what I needed them to do, and they've fallen short for a variety of reasons. That was until this guy came along. It's Microsoft's brand new Surface Go. And whilst a lot of people were sort of wondering who the Go might be suited for, I was screaming out, begging to get my hands on one of these because I thought it could be the perfect machine for me on the couch. The Go is essentially a smaller, lighter version of Microsoft's popular Surface lineup. It has all the regular Surface features, the Surface kickstand, it has the Surface connector for adding on a keyboard cover, and then it has a 10-inch 1800 by 1200 touchscreen display that looks absolutely incredible. It also has on the exterior a USB-C port, which is a huge win, a 3.5mm headphone jack, a micro SD card reader, an 8 megapixel rear-facing camera, and then a 5 megapixel front-facing camera, which can also be used for Windows Hello, which is essentially logging into Windows like you do with Face ID on your iPhone. There's also a pair of front-facing stereo speakers, which sound absolutely incredible for the size of this thing, and for my money, beats the iPad Pro hands down. The Go is powered by an Intel Pentium Gold 4415Y CPU. Now, if you're old enough to remember the Pentium brand, don't be fooled because the version that's inside this guy is one step below the M series. And whilst that draws very little power and gives it a great 9-hour battery life, it isn't exactly a beast of a CPU. If you're planning on using a Go for doing things like Photoshop and Premiere, I think you should look elsewhere. But if you're using it for general stuff on the couch like web browsing or writing up Word documents, then the Go is going to be just fine with that CPU. From here, it goes into two different versions of the Go. There's a lower end version which retails for $5.99 Australian, and that includes 4 gig of RAM and a 64 gig eMMC drive, which is kind of like having a soldered SD card inside of the thing and is pretty much useless. The only real choice is the $839 one, unfortunately. That includes 8 gig of RAM, which is a lot more reasonable these days, and a 128 gig SSD drive, which actually works. Unfortunately, the prices don't stop there. When you buy the Surface, whether it's the $5.99 version or the $8.39 version, in the box you are literally getting a Surface. There is a charger, and I'm surprised we don't have to pay for that these days as well, but there is nothing else. If you want the keyboard, that's another $200. If you want the pen, that's another $140. If you want the Surface branded mouse, that's another $55. And these things all add up to making the Surface Go a more usable device for you. The pen is probably the most useless thing I've thought that I've wanted for a very long time. For $140, you're getting a stylus which connects really easily, works just like you'd expect it to, but in my experience was pretty unresponsive, and I had a lot of trouble actually using it in some of the applications. The one thing they do right with the stylus, well, they've actually made it clip on and it has a home, which unlike the Apple Pencil, is something it's still searching for. The Surface mouse is exactly that, a mouse. It's a Bluetooth mouse. You can use any one. You don't have to rely on the $55 version, but you can buy into it if you want to. The Surface keyboard cover is something that I had to get, and at $200, that's taking up the price of my device already to over $1,000. It clips on and works really easily, connecting to the Surface connector, but it was something I was really worried about. My biggest issue with using the iPad Pro as a device on my couch was having it balance and sit on my lap. Thankfully, with the Surface Go and its keyboard cover, with its kickstand feature, it wasn't really an issue, and the keyboard is quite rigid in comparison to a lot of Apple's and the third-party manufacturers. The one thing you do have to get used to though is the keys are relatively close together, and that's something that's different to most keyboards out there. It does take a little bit of adjustment, but to be honest, after a couple of days of typing on it, I didn't have a problem at all, and I was going back and forth between a regular desktop and the Surface keyboard. The big downside of the keyboard cover is the trackpad, which is one of its best features, having that, because you don't want to rely on the stylus or the touchscreen, but it's also one of its worst as well. It was kind of okay using it on a desk situation, having it all set up and being in like a perfect sterile environment, but when I'm using it on my lap, I quite often found that it would think that I was touching it, but I wasn't actually. I was still just typing or resting near it. Even with its sensitivity turned all the way down, I still found that my cursor was sort of jumping all over the place and causing a little bit of issue when I really wanted it to work a lot better and more reliably than it did. The Go's other big drawback, and I know there's going to be a huge sigh or roll of eyes when I say this one, it's Windows. Windows just isn't made, even with its tablet mode features, to be a touchscreen interface. It is awful. And I had not just problems with its tablet mode, which does a really good job for what it sort of advertises that it will do. The bigger issues were just doing normal everyday stuff. Trying to scroll through a web page, trying to scroll through a document. Those things should be 100% no issue straight out of the box. But when I'm trying to do it with a finger, or even worse with the stylus, it was awful. It was one of the worst experiences I've ever had. And it's one of those things that really hurts using the Surface Go as a multi-use device. When all said and done, the Microsoft Surface Go is oh so close to being the perfect couch come road everything machine that I want it to be. I kind of love it, I kind of hate it, and it's frustrating just how close it is to being everything I want. If I were a Microsoft person living in a magical Windows world, then the Surface Go would definitely fill the hole that I have. But as an Apple person, it's difficult for me to say that I truly have embraced everything that is the Surface Go. But I have committed to giving it a shot, and I can say that for now, the Surface Go is my new couch companion. The only thing that's left to do now is to buy a new couch to go with it. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the Surface Go or any of the other products that we've reviewed, you can check them out on our YouTube channel, or you can see in-depth reviews over on our website at reckoner.com.au.